Hey everybody, so welcome back, and basically what I'm going to be talking now is just another form of foreign aid that basically our government gives out through the IMF, which is the World Bank. So basically one of the main way they give out this foreign aid is through loans, and they give these poor countries loans. But first of all, I want to give kind of like a backdrop of the IMF. The IMF was created back in 1994 in New Hampshire. the The IMF was basically put in power by certain powerful countries like France, the U.S., Japan, basically the more powerful countries in the world. And under the guise of giving financial aid, the IMF is nothing more than a system of modern-day colonialism that takes from the poor and gives to the rich. And basically, the way they do that is they basically force loans upon these poor countries. But I'll get to that here in a second. So the U.S. owns around 18% of the IMF. So we are the biggest shareholder of the IMF in the world, and then 5 countries total have 38% of the vote in the IMF. So that kind of gives you an idea that 5 countries basically, decide 38% of the decisions that have to do with the entire world. I mean, what's the interest rate going to be on this loan for this certain country, so on and so forth. It's just insane when you think about it, that such of a small group of people should control basically the entire world. And it really is a small group of people, because even though the U.S. is a major stockholder, obviously the board of directors is just a small group of people, and they're making the decisions. So the IMF encourages crony capitalism and subsidies to multinational corporations. That's one of the ways we give aid. We give subsidies to multinational corporations, and then the IMF also encourages them to give further subsidies to those multinational corporations. And what those multi-corporations do is they actually crowd out local companies, because they can't compete with the big corporations. So, and it's just a way of bringing home the bacon and controlling a certain country. It's basically colonialism, but basically, using their government as a puppet. So, back in the day, during colonialism, the British Empire, they would control India, and, the shit would go down. People would get sick and tired of them, because they don't want another country controlling them. But now there's no excuse, because it's your own country, it's your own people controlling your own people, but they're just as fucking corrupt as, the British Empire was, if not more. It's actually worse nowadays, because if you were part of the British Empire, if you were a colony under the British Empire, you actually, only paid very, very little in taxes. You had very low regulations, so on and so forth. But nowadays, it's just through these corrupt governments, and it's just absurd. But the form of financial aid the IMF gives out is through loans, and these loans have relatively high interest rates, which the countries will never pay off, because they're basically discouraged to do so. So if a country wants to pay off their loan, like I was watching an interview with the socialist Brazilian president. He was talking about how he wanted to pay him off, and I guess finally the IMF convinced him not to pay off that debt. I don't know what happened, but they convinced him to do so. But obviously, these countries that have these big loans with the IMF, they're never going to pay them off, and they're always going to have to be sitting there paying that interest. So the money that's borrowed goes directly to these corrupt governments, like Afghanistan, Pakistan, whatever. So the money from these loans go directly to these corrupt governments. They misuse it. They murder people. They put people in jail. They stone women, so on and so forth. is giving loans to, it's basically giving loans to shitty people to do fucking bullshit. And it's just a big waste of money, basically. I mean, I don't want to be, why should my government be sitting there giving loans out to people so they can fucking go kill people with it or go murder innocent women and children with it? I mean, it's ridiculous. And then when the government goes under, the people of the borrowing country actually have to pay back that debt through taxes. Just kind of like what we're doing, except, you know, the Chinese government's actually buying our debt. But if we were one of these poor countries, then we'd have to raise our taxes. So like in Spain, for instance, there's a big recession. There's like 50% unemployment. I lived in Spain for 4 years, and there's like around 50% unemployment, like I just said. And the government is in such debt that the IMF has gone to them and told them, hey, you have to do austerity, kind of like they did in Greece. And what austerity is basically cutting spending, which is actually a good thing. But then it also tells you to raise prices, which is a bad thing, because if you're raising prices on your people, then obviously those people have a hard time doing business. I mean, could you imagine you making $30,000 a year and having to pay, you know, 50% in taxes or whatever? I mean, you'd be getting $15,000, and then you'd have to pay this other bullshit, and then you might get like a speeding ticket, and by the end of the year you'd have like fucking $2,000. I mean, what kind of bullshit is that? But this is the kind of fucking world that we live in, where, you know, where our Federal Reserve fucks things up in this country, and then the World Bank's fucking things up over the world, and then everything's getting fucked over, and we just have this big mess. So basically the IMF is anti-freedom. It's pro-crony capitalism. It may seem like it's promoting things like capitalism, but in reality it's promoting crony capitalism through government subsidies and stuff like that. So just to give you guys something to think about. I know most people don't really care about this kind of stuff, but it is important. I mean, it's kind of like the elephant in the room. And back in the day, a lot of people actually worried about, you know, finances a lot more than they do nowadays. And nowadays, people just don't give a shit. People don't even know what the fucking president is. So I mean, it's like whatever. But I'll see you guys next time. So have a nice one.